Chapter 9. A Hot Journey to Nowhere. That night, they reached a fort on the outskirts of the Great Eye. The land looked just like Elizabeth's mother's and aunt's description. There was absolutely no change of any kind for farther than she could see. It was also as hot as an oven out there. Her captors slowed down, but not by much. There were more outposts set up, and Zet switched the camels out whenever his group came to one. The kidnappers traveled fast at night and slow in the day. One day, Zet couldn't help but boast to her. "The baby is getting special treatment. We have to haul much of the water we drink to the cisterns. There are fewer natural wells out here than on the main route. It'll take us weeks to recover the water," he told her. Elizabeth was fascinated. He never talked that much. It was Mitha who asked, "My uncle Dran traveled across the desert to western Haremland once. How can you travel so fast? He said there's nothing in the Great Eye except emptiness." Zet laughed. "Foolish goatherd," he explained. "None of them know about our secret. We discovered it decades ago. We can get all the supplies we need there. You'll have to see it to believe it. Now go back to that baby." Mitha returned to Jankar. She knew when she was dismissed. Elizabeth gloated. Zet was getting careless. Elizabeth had her mother's sense of direction and could tell where they were changing directions from due west to southwest. If she didn't know better, she'd guess that they would intersect with the harem's trade route. That night, she had another dream. This time, Aunt Melanie led a rescue party. It was a hot afternoon like all the others. The air shimmered with mirages all around them. Elizabeth peered out of her camel's covering. Suddenly, Aunt Melanie strode through the heat waves with 20 Bithian soldiers behind her. Her father Josh was on horseback. He charged toward the kidnappers' caravan, sword in hand. He cut Zet's head off with his first stroke. Meanwhile, Aunt Melanie blasted into the kidnappers with white lightning. Several kidnappers disintegrated in her beams. When it was over, Josh and Aunt Melanie hugged her. Then Aunt Melanie turned into a dragon and they flew home. "That is what you want, but it won't happen," Mitha told her. "Your aunt can't do magic anymore. You're on your own." Elizabeth was getting cranky with all these dreams. "If you're imaginary, how do you know that?" she asked. "Because you made me up. I know what you know, silly," Mitha laughed. "So what am I supposed to do?" she asked Mitha. "Look at the necklace, stupid." The next morning, Elizabeth forgot her dream. By noon, the air was hot and motionless. She opened the curtain of her camel's tent to peer out for a moment. There was nothing to see. Jankar had been doing lots of grabbing lately. She had tried to make him toys out of old cloth because she hadn't anything else. Jankar liked to put them in his mouth, sucking on them until they were soaked with drool. Then he would beat them on whatever he could find until he dropped it. Elizabeth's necklace had slipped out of her shirt, and he reached up, yanking on it. "Ouch!" she said. He was adept now at sitting up on a swaying camel. Elizabeth started to drop the necklace back down her shirt and stopped. It was a fairly large locket, about the size of a $50. She looked at the harem symbol. The symbol was ancient harem. The symbol was for the word sanctuary. What was it Zet had told her? They were going to sanctuary, a place no one will ever find. Elizabeth looked very carefully at the locket now. To be truthful, she had hoped it would give her magic. When it didn't, she had forgotten about it. Elizabeth looked at the edges carefully. On the bottom was a thumbnail slit. Jankar laughed. He liked pretty things. "Shh," she told him. "If you stay quiet, I'll tell you a story about your dad and an iron bar," she said in exaggerated baby talk. Jankar grabbed one of his rag toys. More interested in that, she supposed. Elizabeth looked at his head for a moment. His dark, kinky curls were actually getting long. Maybe she should try to put them in cornrows. She looked at his fat little brown face and dark eyes. He tried to grab her necklace again. Elizabeth had been angry with him for a long time. It wasn't fair to him. He was just a helpless, very cute baby. He bonked her with one of his rag dolls. Maybe he wasn't so helpless. "Maybe I'll do it when you're asleep," she told him. "You're a wiggly little warrior." Then she peeked out the tent flap again. There were no guards near, just one at the front of the caravan and one way at the back. Elizabeth put her fingernail into the catch and popped the locket open. A tiny folded piece of parchment fell out. It was old-looking. Elizabeth was pretty sure Drass gave this locket to Raven Rider. Jan's was too serious, if she remembered correctly. That meant that the piece of parchment was either about 60 years old or over 400, depending on whether you counted Bithnian time or our world time. She very carefully unfolded it. Ancient harem was not her specialty, but she took a look. "Raven Rider, I've had this for a while. I think it's key to our quest, but can't figure it out. Are you interested in coming?" It must have been Draz, she thought absent-mindedly. Elizabeth glanced out of the tent again. No guards were looking, so she tossed the paper onto the pebbles on the ground. The next camel in line crushed it into the rock. No one saw it. Expecting great things, she looked inside the locket. It had, well, lots of long squiggly lines on the right-hand side and a long stringy line that went toward the edge and met up with another line with X's on it. The other side of the locket had another set of squigglies. Elizabeth lost interest in it. She closed the locket and dropped it down her neck before Jankar could grab it. She still felt hopeless. The locket told her nothing. Her trip to her old home had been wasted. Elizabeth moved a sleeping goat aside to lay Jankar back down. If the smell from his bottom region was any indication, it was time for a change. How could one little boy stink so much? She sniffed herself in disgust. Desert travel and limited water usage caused this. If she had to stay on this camel much longer, she was going to smell like the goats or camels. Meetha the goatherd laughed at her. That night, they reached the next cistern. Zet was livid. Somehow it had cracked. The travelers still had enough water to make it to the next cistern, but they would have to slow down. That made Zet even madder. Elizabeth laughed to herself. She wondered if they were struck by a dust storm, if he would get so angry he'd have a stroke or something. That night, she had no bad dreams.